I thank the Majority Leader, and I would like to just add, there must be those following the debate are wondering, what's the basis for the junior senator from Arkansas opposing these 8 nominees? There must be something wrong with them. There must be something in their background that doesn't add up. I mean, consider the variety of individuals who are being held up by the junior senator from Arkansas. Ryan Buchanan of Georgia to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District. Jason Ferguson of Nevada to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Nevada. Andrew Lugar of Minnesota to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, and the senator from Minnesota will speak to that in just a moment. Mark Totten of Michigan to be U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Michigan. Marissa Darden of Ohio to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. Delia Smith of the Virgin Islands to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Virgin Islands. Eddie Frizzell, again of Minnesota, to be U.S. Marshal for the District of Minnesota. And LaDon Reynolds of Illinois to be U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois. Madam President, we looked especially at our own very closely to make sure that they were qualified to take on this federal position. Several of my colleagues are going to come to the floor today to speak about the nominees being held up by one senator. So rather than delving into the records of all the 8 nominees, let me just focus on the one in Illinois. Chief LaDon Reynolds, nominated to serve as U.S. Marshal for the Northern District. Chief Reynolds has served the people of Illinois for nearly 30 years. He joined the Oak Park Police Department in 1994, rising steadily through the ranks until his appointment in 2019 as chief. In addition to his service at the Oak Park Police Department, Chief Reynolds serves on the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Board, Illinois Commission on Discrimination and Hate, and Executive Board of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. In short, Chief Reynolds is eminently qualified to serve as U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Illinois. There is simply no valid basis to delay his confirmation, and I have yet to hear the senator from Arkansas come forward with a bill of particulars of why he has decided to single out the people that I just mentioned to deny them an opportunity to make communities safer across America. At a time of high crime and the need for a coordinated effort at every single level, there is absolutely no valid explanation of why these individuals are being withheld from their responsibilities in these communities. We need to have law enforcement taken seriously and respected. Holding up nominations for no particular reason other than a political issue that may bother the senator is certainly no reason for us to jeopardize the safety of innocent people living in these communities who depend on these federal law enforcement officials to do their job. At this point, I'd like to make a unanimous consent request. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of the following nominations en bloc. Calendar numbers 660, 661, 662, 663, 739, 740, 741, 742. That the Senate vote on the nominations en bloc without intervening action or debate. The motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate. That any statement related to the nominations be printed in the record, and that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Arkansas.
Yeah, reserving the right to object, which I most certainly will do, I'll just address what the senator from Illinois said. He said he's heard no explanation for why I'm objecting to every Department of Justice nominee moving forward on a fast-track basis. That's false. He's heard my explanation repeatedly. He may not like it, but he's heard it. I'm taking this stance on behalf of 4 brave U.S. Marshals who defended the federal courthouse in Portland from left-wing street militias associated with the BLM movement and Antifa. In the summer of 2020, this was part of riots all across our country. But in Portland, these riots were particularly dangerous. Marshals were targeted with lasers to blind them, with ball bearings, with fireworks. There were efforts to barricade them inside the courthouse and set it on fire to burn them alive. These marshals are heroes, and they should be celebrated. Anyone who says they support law enforcement should be defending these marshals. Yet, not surprisingly, left-wing activists and left-wing organizations like the ACLU are coming to the defense of the left-wing street militia that attacked these marshals and tried to burn down the Portland courthouse, suing marshals on frivolous grounds. Many of these marshals are being defended by the Department of Justice, as is the Department of Justice's long-standing custom and practice to either provide representation for its law enforcement officers when they are sued in court, or if there is some conflict, to reimburse them and pay their legal fees. 4 marshals are not being defended, though. These 4 marshals are GS-11s, GS-13s. They've been serving our country for a lifetime. Many of them are veterans of foreign wars. They face financial bankruptcy and ruin because the Department of Justice won't represent them. In many cases, won't even give them an answer or explain why the representation was denied. Well, when I learned of this, I demanded answers. And the Department of Justice had no answers. So, if my colleagues think that I'm going to just roll out the red carpet for Department of Justice nominees to be confirmed to politically connected positions while GS-11s and GS-13s are hung out to dry, they have another thing coming. Now, some of you may say, well, maybe there's investigations underway. Maybe these officers engaged in misconduct. We don't know. They won't give us an answer. But here's what we do know. All 4 of them, all 4, are currently on unrestricted active duty. Unrestricted active duty. And I would add, all four are in the Special Operations Group for the Marshal Service, which means to say they are the marshals who are most likely to be deployed nationwide and put in circumstances that risk their lives and call for them to use violence, to include lethal violence. Now, I don't know the circumstances that led to the denial of representation of these 4 marshals, or why some of them are being strung along, but I have to assume that if they are on unrestricted active duty in the Special Operations Group for the Marshal Service, that Merrick Garland and Vanita Gupta can't have any doubts about their fitness to serve or their action for all those weeks in Portland when they defended the courthouse from left-wing street militias. Now, I understand my colleagues want to get their U.S. attorneys or the U.S. Marshals confirmed. Maybe there's people at Maine Justice they want to get confirmed as well. That's very simple. We could do it today. We could hear from Merrick Garland or Vanita Gupta that they will defend these 4 U.S. Marshals in court. Or we could hear a satisfactory answer of why they won't defend the marshals in court. Is it because they were standing up to a left-wing street militia? Is it because they were taking a stance to defend federal property from Antifa? I don't know. We can't get an answer. Maybe my Democratic colleagues could get an answer. But to think that I'm just going to roll over and allow the Senate to fast-track nominees to the department when GS-11s and GS-13s, law enforcement professionals, are being hung out to dry? Sorry. These are people, and I've talked to them, who were worried about buying Christmas gifts for their children last year because they were going to have to pay legal fees. Who worry about paying the mortgage next month. Who worry about sending their kids to camp. Sorry if your lawyers have to wait for a week or 2 to get confirmed to the U.S. Attorney's position. I'm worried about 4 heroes who defended federal property from left-wing street militias. So yeah, I do object.
Mr. President,
Objection is heard.
try to follow that logic, if you will. The senator is so committed to law enforcement, he is so committed to U.S. Marshals, he won't let us appoint people to fill vacancies. He takes a case in Portland, Oregon, where he wrote a letter to the Department of Justice within the last 2 weeks asking for the status of their defense of these 74 individuals. Now, he knows, and we all know, that before we can take any action for anybody, we need a confidentiality waiver, a privacy statement. That's routine in all of our offices. Each one of these individuals, despite the interest of the junior senator from Arkansas, has their own legal right to determine whether or not they want to waive any privacy so that they can tell the public or discuss even with the senator their plight and how they want to address it. There is also something called the attorney-client privilege, which the senator, I'm sure, is aware of. That, too, is a privilege which allows the individual to deny ordinary access to information if they so choose. It's their decision. So the complication of this situation is ignored by the senator from Arkansas. He is valiantly standing for U.S. Marshals that he won't appoint. He believes they're important and give their lives to their country, and many have, and yet he won't let them stand up and do that on behalf of our communities. He wants an answer to his letter, and until he gets an answer to his letter, then we're not going to be able to put law enforcement in place to deal with crime in this country. We can make all the statements, run all the ads, make all the speeches on the floor about a concern for safety in our communities, and then the junior senator from Arkansas says, I want you to be safe in your community, but you can't have a U.S. attorney to prosecute those would-be terrorists. You can't have a U.S. Marshal in pursuit of fugitives from justice. You can't have a U.S. Marshal to protect the courthouse of the men and women who go to work there every day and risk their lives for the administration of justice. This is upside down. We are talking about 74 individuals. The Department of Justice has said they are going to defend 70 of them. One is a question, I assume, whether he was acting in the scope of his employment, and 3 are under review. And for that reason, this senator has decided to stop the administration of justice in these jurisdictions, or at least slow it down. That makes no sense whatsoever. The basis for objecting to these individuals has nothing to do with their individual qualifications. He didn't raise a single question. All he said is, your lawyers are going to have to wait, as if these were just lawyers waiting for a fee. These are men and women willing to serve as he serves in public service. It's more than just lawyers, not that there's anything wrong with that category of Americans, but it's individuals who are willing to engage in public service. And why are we in such a hurry? We're in the second year of this president's administration. It's time to fill these vacancies. As Senator Schumer said earlier on the floor, there are several on the Republican side who just want to drag this out interminably in the hopes that they can stop the Biden administration from filling these vacancies. My colleague from Arkansas asked whether the DOJ is representing federal law enforcement personnel who protected the federal courthouse in Portland. The Fox News headline about his letter said, quote, Cotton places hold on DOJ nominees after refusal to defend U.S. Marshals involved in Portland Antifa riots. Here's the reality. The Department of Justice often represents or pays private counsel to represent federal employees sued in their individual capacity. But there are some constraints, and I've mentioned them. For example, regulations require the Department of Justice can only represent employees for actions within the scope of their employment. For example, protecting the Portland courthouse, which clearly is within the scope. And the Department of Justice can only represent them if doing so would be in the interest of the United States. It clearly would be if they're defending against terrorists. The senator knows this. You know why he knows it? Because the Department of Justice responded to his letter. He just didn't like the response. It didn't go far enough. The department said the Department of Justice strongly supports the provision of representation to federal officers acting in the line of duty. The department also told him that it represents or has paid for private counsel to represent 70 of these federal employees who have been sued in connection with the events in Portland, while denying only a single request for representation. I don't know the facts of that denial. I don't know if there's been a privacy waiver signed. I don't know if this individual says I have an attorney-client privilege and I don't have to tell the senator from Arkansas or anyone what the circumstances are. Yet the senator from Arkansas is now demanding to know why the Department of Justice denied this one requests for representation and why it's still reviewing 3 others. That's right. He's blocking the confirmation of critical law enforcement officials across the United States until he gets an answer that he likes. The DOJ has already explained that it cannot comment further, and here's what they said. In light of significant confidentiality interest and applicable privileges, as I mentioned earlier, the privacy laws and attorney-client privilege. DOJ's regulations make it clear that communication about an employee's request for representation are protected by the attorney-client privilege, and the Privacy Act prevents DOJ from disclosing the personnel records of an employee, and that's as it should be. Let me be clear, these privileges protect the privacy of the very law enforcement personnel whose interests the senator from Arkansas claims to represent. My Republican colleagues frequently claim to be the party of law and order, but in this matter and others, they're the ones playing politics with law enforcement. Because the Department of Justice will not snap to the senator's request and violate standing federal laws, because they won't ignore and violate those laws of privacy and attorney-client privilege, the senator from Arkansas is prepared to endanger the communities and law enforcement until he gets his way. I've heard my Republican colleagues time and again claiming the Biden administration and Democratic mayors in big cities are responsible for violent crime. They claim that this increase in violent crime has nothing to do with the fact that America is awash in guns. But the reality is that the increase in violent crime started during the last administration, under President Trump. It is impacting communities led by both Democratic and Republican officials, and it is being driven by gun violence. FBI statistics show that 77% of homicides in 2020 were committed with guns. In Chicago, that number's higher. 93% of homicides last year in Chicago committed by gun. We face a gun violence crisis. The Judiciary Committee has held 5 hearings last year on ways to reduce it. I'm going to continue it this year. But if we're going to address this crisis, we're going to need senators from both parties to show some courage and to admit that gun violence in America is a real problem. We also need Republicans to stop defending the violent insurrection that took place right in this chamber on January 6, 2021. The senator was present. All of us were. We'll never forget that day as long as we live. 5 brave police officers lost their lives as a result of what the Republican National Committee, in its official policy position, calls legitimate political discourse. This is nothing new. Last year, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, $350 billion for state and local governments. We made sure that that funding was going to hire good law enforcement officials and invested in community violence intervention. Not a single Republican senator approved it. There are areas where we are working together on bipartisan legislation, and I hope we will continue to. And last year, President Biden signed 3 laws in that area. I hope my Republican colleagues will take a lesson from today. If we're going to stand together, then let us all stand behind the federal law enforcement team. When President Trump asked for his team, Democrats in the Senate cooperated and gave those people to him. They weren't the people we would have chosen, but he was president and had the right to do his best to protect this nation. So does President Biden. President Biden has called for significant increases for our police in the burn justice program and the cops hiring program, but this important funding has been delayed by debate over appropriations. We shouldn't delay the appointment of these key law enforcement officials either. Again and again, Democrats are working to support law enforcement and to keep Americans safe. Sometimes we are joined in these efforts by Republicans and other times not. But there is no benefit to law enforcement when senators block the confirmation of well-qualified U.S. Attorney and U.S. Marshal nominees as we see today. I urge the senator from Arkansas to stand up for law enforcement. A political story on Fox is not worth undermining the lives of innocent Americans. We've got to end this obstruction and let these nominees protect and serve. And I now yield to Senator Klobuchar.
Yeah, Madam President.
The junior senator from Arkansas.
I'm surprised to hear the senator of Illinois continue to refer to this as a political issue or a political story when we have career law enforcement officers who put their lives on the line to defend federal property from left-wing street militias, and they're worried if they can put food on the table for their children, if they can buy them gifts at Christmas, if they can put braces on them, if they can send them to summer camp. I don't consider that a political issue. I consider it standing up for law enforcement. Not just these four, but every deputy marshal around the country who forms the backbone of the Marshal Service. The backbone of the Marshal Service all across the country, who have to wonder if maybe they're going to be the next one to be hung out to dry by the Department of Justice if they confront a rioter with the wrong politics. It's not a political issue. Now, the senator from Illinois continues to speak about confidentiality and attorney-client privilege, as if this is all information that's been communicated to these four marshals, and they just don't want to share it with us here in the Senate. That's not the case. Three of them, I would say, haven't heard anything. In a lawsuit that's almost 18 months old, they've been told nothing yet. That's why they've had to go out and retain their own counsel. One of them was denied representation with no more basis than saying it's not in the interest of the United States of America. Well, forgive me if I don't trust Vanita Gupta to determine what is in the interest of the United States when it comes to defending law enforcement. These marshals are told that these determinations are final and there is no appeal and there is no recourse. Well, I'm the recourse now. The senator from Illinois keeps talking about these urgent law enforcement needs. In his own state of Illinois, I would point out that the position that is empty has been empty since 2018. If it was so urgent, the senator of Illinois could have cooperated with the Trump administration and tried to fill it then. Or these U.S. attorney positions that are empty. President Biden fired all U.S. attorneys a year ago. If it was so urgent to have Senate-confirmed U.S. attorneys in position, he could have asked them to continue to serve until he was able to find suitable replacements. The senator from Illinois also said, well, Senator Cotton got his letter responded to. I'm not looking for some courtesy exchange of letters here. I'm trying to protect four U.S. Marshals who defended the Portland courthouse from a left-wing street militia who have been hung out to dry, imperiling the confidence of all marshals across the country in whether or not their political leadership at the Department of Justice will back them up when they're in a controversy. And the department still won't answer that. They won't take any steps to answer it. They simply hide behind confidentiality and privilege, just like they're hiding behind it with these four U.S. Marshals. After 18 months, what's so complicated? The senator from Illinois said they are representing 70 others. What makes these four so different? Maybe they engaged in misconduct? Is that possible? Given the fact that they're all on unrestricted active duty, in the Special Operations Group, the element of the marshals most likely to have to use violence to include lethal violence? Would Merrick Garland and Vanita Gupta really send them back out on the streets if they had engaged in misconduct in Portland? These marshals deserve better. And they could get better if the Department of Justice would just agree to represent them, or if they would give a satisfactory, fact-based answer about why they're not representing them. Maybe some of my Democratic colleagues could call Merrick Garland or Vanita Gupta and ask them for such an answer. Or maybe just call them and say, why don't you represent these four marshals? That seems like the obvious, satisfactory outcome for everyone here. U.S. Marshals are represented in court as they should be, and we can go back to fast-tracking Department of Justice nominees. But until we get to that outcome, we won't be fast-tracking department nominees, because I will continue to stand up for these brave men of law enforcement who deserve better from this Department of Justice.